We're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, entitled Karma Yoga, text number 14. Anad bhavati bhutani parjanyad anasambhavaha yagnad bhavati parjanyo yagna karma samudbhavaha. Responsively, please repeat. Anat, from grains. Bhavanti, grow. Bhutani, the material bodies. Parjanyat, from rains. Ana, of food grains. Sambhavaha, production. Yagnat, from the performance of sacrifice. Bhavati, becomes possible. Parjanyaha, rain. Yagya, performance of yagya. Karma, prescribed duties. Samudbhavaha, born of. Translation. All living bodies subsist on food grains which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by performance of yagya, sacrifice, and yagya is born of prescribed duties. Purport. Srila Baladeva Vibhusan, a great commentator on Srimad Bhagavad Gita, writes as follows: Yen yadri yanghat taryavasti tang yagyam sarveshwaram Vishnu abhyarcha tatschesham ashnanti tena taddeha yatram sampadayanti te shanta sarveshwarasya yagya purushasya bhaktaha sarva kilvishayar anadi kala vivridhayar atmanubhava pratibhandakayar nikilai prapayar vimuchite. The Supreme Lord, who is known as the Yagya Purush, are the personal beneficiary of all sacrifices, is the master of all the demigods, who serve him as the different limbs of the body serve the whole. Demigods like Indra, Chandra, Varuna are appointed officers who manage material affairs, and the Vedas direct sacrifices to satisfy these demigods so that they may be pleased to supply air, light, and water sufficiently to produce food grains. When Lord Krishna is worshipped, the demigods, who are all different limbs of the Lord, are also automatically worshipped. Therefore, there's no separate need to worship the demigods. For this reason, the devotees of the Lord, who are in Krishna consciousness, offer food to Krishna and then eat, a process which nourishes the body spiritually. By such action, not only are past sinful reactions to the body vanquished, but the body becomes immunized to all contamination of material nature. When there is an epidemic disease, an antiseptic vaccine protects a person from the attack of such an epidemic. Similarly, food offered to Lord Vishnu and taken by us makes us sufficiently resistant to material affection. And one who is accustomed to this practice is called a devotee of the Lord. Therefore, a person in Krishna consciousness who eats only food offered to Krishna can counteract all reactions of past material infections, which are impediments to the progress of self-realization. On the other hand, one who does not do so continues to increase the volume of sinful action, and this prepares the next body to resemble hogs and dogs, to suffer the resultant reaction of all sins. The material world is full of contamination, and one who is immunized by accepting prasadam of the Lord, food offered to Vishnu, is saved from the attack, whereas the one who does not do so becomes subjected to contamination. Food grains or vegetables are factually edibles. The human being eats different kinds of foods, grains, vegetables, fruits, etc. And the animals eat the refuse of the food grains and vegetables, grass, plants, etc. Human beings who are accustomed to eating meat and fish must also depend on the production of vegetation in order to eat the animals. Therefore, ultimately, we have to depend on the production of the field and not on the production of big factories. The field production is due to sufficient rain from the sky, and such rains are controlled by demigods like Indra, sun, moon, etc. And they are all servants of the Lord. The Lord can be satisfied by sacrifices, therefore one who cannot perform them will find himself in scarcity. That is the law of nature. Yajna, specifically the Sankirtan Yajna, prescribed for this age, must therefore be performed to save us at least from scarcity of food supply. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unnaditam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, this part of the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna is taking us from understanding Karma Yoga, or Karma Kanda, to understanding Karma Yoga. In other words, people do things in this world that perform activities out of a desire to get something in return. And it's karma. You do some work, you get some fruit from that work, you try to enjoy the fruit of that work. This is called karma. So karma kanda means to placate or to worship the demigods with the idea that they will provide the necessities of life. Right? On the other hand, karma yoga means performing activities not for getting something in return, but for the pleasure of the Lord. To simply act for the pleasure of God, this is karma yoga. Right? So here in this particular verse, Lord Krishna is explaining the situation of the Bhutani, right? What is that? It means the material body. Everyone in this material world has a material body, right? And the body, in order to sustain, needs food, right? Grains, rice, and atta for chapati, right? So these things are required for the growth and strength of the body. But where do those things come from? Parjanyad, they come from rain, right? And rain comes by performance of sacrifice. But Krishna is explaining in this verse that in order to get sufficient food, one has to recognize a higher authority, the worshipping and offering sacrifice, right? In other words, you're acknowledging that you're dependent on one higher authority for your production of grain, etc. Right? The sun, it's explained by Madhvacharya, that when sacrifice is offered and ghee, clarified butter, ghee is offered to the fire, that the sun god accepts that offering. And then the sun god creates clouds, right? The sun is over the ocean and it heats up the ocean and draws up so much water in the form of clouds. So when those clouds come over the land, they cool down and then it rains, right? And from rain comes production, field production, rice and dal and so many other things, sabjis, vegetables. without rain you can't get these things. You may have a great factory, but still our existence doesn't depend on that factory. It depends on rain, right? And so therefore, yajna is required. One has to perform yajna. Yajna is born of prescribed duties, it's explained. So that means that there's the varnas, there's the different occupations that are there, and one performs those occupations also or for the pleasure of the Lord, either Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. The Brahmins are the intellectual class, and they teach. They know everything, and they teach everything. Dronacharya was the teacher of the Pandavas. Although he was a Brahmin, he taught them all the military arts also. He knew that. So the Brahmins knew everything from the Vedic literature, and they would teach. And they would accept some dakshin for their existence. But they didn't hoard things. They were very detached, the Brahmins. They would be presented so much in the form of dakshin. The parents would send the teachers to the Brahmins for learning, and along with them they'd send rice and dal and sabji, right? And the Brahmins would teach the village children, right? And then what they received, they would cook everything, offer it to the Vishnu, and then take some portion and distribute the rest in the form of prasadam, right? So at the end of the day, the balance was still zero. But because they were dependent on the Lord, they received what they required just by performing the sacrifice of their prescribed duty as a Brahmin. Right? There's examples in history how the Brahmins would advise the kings. In Ramayana, Lord Ramchandra, when after being in the forest for so many years, when he came back to Ayodhya, he was to be crowned as the king, coronation, right? So at his coronation ceremony, he told all the Brahmins who were performing the yajna that actually this Ayodhya, this kingdom, belongs to you because you're the representatives of the Supreme Lord. So you take this kingdom. And what did the Brahmins say? The Brahmins said, O king, Ram, actually you better take this kingdom because you can manage it better than us. So they gave it back to her. Right? This was the reciprocal arrangement between the Brahmins and the kings. The kings would manage, and the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas would manage, and the Brahmins would give advice based on Shastra. Right? And the whole breakdown of the Varnashram system was when the dispute came between the kings and the Brahmins. But there's meant to be a balance. And the Kshatriyas would, perform their prescribed duty, right? They would perform their prescribed duty of protecting the citizens, and then they would collect some taxes, and they would use some portion for the maintenance, and some portion they would keep in reserve for when there was scarcity. And then they would open up their treasury and distribute what was required for the kingdom, right? So this is the Kshatriya's prescribed duty. And the prescribed duty of the Vaishya is to do agriculture work and to take care of the cows. This is the main thing, right? Krishi, Goraksha, and Varnijam. But nowadays there's no Krishi, no Goraksha, only Varnijam. Trading. But that wasn't, the Vedic system is, they farm, they only grow what they actually are going to use, and use everything they grow, and if there's some surplus, then the Varnijam came. Right? Just like Nanda Maharaj. He was known as a Maharaj, although he was a farmer. He took care of cows, but he had great opulence because there was so much milk that they could trade it for other things. He had valuable jewels and fine cloth to wear and the silk-covered turbans, right? But we see that Nanda Maharaj was following this system of worshipping the demigods, right? He wanted to perform the Indra Yagya, and that's when Krishna advised that instead of worshipping Indra, why don't we worship Govardhan Hill, right? So the point is, this was the Vedic system, and he was following it. And the reason he was following it is because they were getting the necessities of life. And Krishna's point was that by automatically worshipping him, right? Govardhan Hill is non-different from Krishna, that automatically the demigods are worshipped. And sometimes the demigods become a little bit infatuated with their power and they forget who they're dependent on. So Krishna actually wanted to bring the pride of Indra down a little bit, and that's why he suggested the worship of Govardhan Hill instead of the Indra Yagya. Because Krishna never likes his devotees to become very proud, right? Krishna likes his devotees to be humble. So sometimes he helps them to become humble. But today we see that although there's a division of society, and that's still there, it can't be done away with. You still have teachers, and you still have government people and soldiers, and you still have farmers, and you have business people, right? But the intellectual class, they're no longer interested in performing yajna, right? They're doing things simply out of the desire for sense gratification, right? They are acting on the platform of animals. That's what animals do. Animals simply act to exist. They just want to exist, right? Eating, sleeping, mating, defending, this was the activities of the animals. And once the intellectual class gives up their understanding of the real purpose of life, and their services are available to the highest bidder, then you have all topsy-turvy that happens, right? Man becomes in competition with one another for the necessities of life instead of there being a balance. You know, the Brahmins, the intellectual class is, supported by the administrative class, and who is supported by the production class, and all the classes are supported by the labor class. But it doesn't work like that now. Labor is trying to organize itself to get more and more advantages from the capitalists, and that's called unions, right? They had a great union leader here in Bombay in the old days called Datta Samant, right? Huh? And he, Dr. Samad, yeah. And he had organized all these mill workers into unions, right? And they closed some mills and created a lot of havoc for the mill owners, right? And if there was a union, then the mill owners would be, right, afraid. So this is the breakdown of prescribed duties when each Varna is trying to simply act on the animal platform and not for spiritual advancement, not for the pleasure, not performing their prescribed duties for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, but simply for sense gratification. And here Krishna is talking about an economy. This is how economy works, right? It's the natural economy. There's rain, rain get grains, grains you eat, the necessities of life. What we actually require comes from the land, right? What we actually require comes from the land. It doesn't come from factories. You can't eat nuts and bolts, right? What you need is grains. And even if you're a meat eater, Prabhupada explains, you still are dependent on the production of the land, because the refuse from making grains, the paddy and the straw, right? It is what the cows eat, the animals eat, goats and pigs or whatever your flavor is, right? So this is a real economy. It's a real live economy. Today's economy is a very complicated thing based on nothing real. It's based on printed paper, right? What is a rupee? It's a printed piece of paper. It's got some paper and some ink. What's its value? Few paisa. That's all. But we ascribe to it this much value or this much value. Imaginary. It's all imaginary. And it becomes so complicated that from time to time it completely collapses. Like in 2008, the United States, total collapse. There were big finance companies, Merrill Lynch, AIG, Bear and Stearns, Goldman Sachs, they all had risky investments. There was a balloon value of property, right? You couldn't buy a piece of property because all the property was invested in by, individuals and big companies, right? And property prices went so high. But it was all a bubble. And at one point it popped. And these companies, they used to say, they're too big to fail. But many of them did just that, they failed. And they ceased to exist as, and they were there since so many decades as big finance giants, right? Because it's artificial. It's an artificial economy. And it's all tied in together. In Greece, if they sneeze, it's felt in the New York Stock Exchange, right? So this is not a real economy. A man's wealth in the Vedic system was measured by how much grains were there he had, and how many animals, right? How many cows. So Nanda Maharaj was a very wealthy man because he had 9 lakh cows. You can just imagine how many cows that is. So the real economics is this: rain, And that comes by performance of yajna, sacrifice. And in this age, we see that performing these costly Agnihotras is very difficult to do. It's not easily performed. It's so much grains and purified ghee, you can't even get pure ghee anymore, right? In order to make 1 kilo of ghee, you need 30 liters of milk. They turn it into dahi and then churn the dahi, you get butter, then it becomes ghee. So 30 liter milk cow's milk is 60 rupees a liter, right? So if you need 30 liters, how much does that come out to be? 1,800. So you can go to the market and they say pure cow's ghee, 250 rupees or 300 rupees. How is it possible? Right? Because they take palm oil or rapeseed oil or something and they put a little yellow color and the essence of ghee, what smells like ghee. 400 rupees, right? So this is Kaliyuga. Very difficult to get anything pure. In haldi, they put sawdust. In milk packet, they put detergent and churna. Right? Read in the paper. In chili powder, they put so many things. Right? Nothing's pure in Kali Yuga. So how to perform the sacrifice? Offering ghee, offering grains to the sacrificial fire. And where are you going to find qualified Brahmins? Right? Previously the Brahmins were so powerful, just by chanting mantras, they could perform so many things. Right? But nowadays, although a person's born in a Brahmin family, they want to be engineer, or they're, they're sometimes in Vrindavan you see the rickshaw driver. He says, I'm Sharma, but he's driving rickshaw. So this is the problem with Kali Yuga. You don't get qualified Brahmins also. Therefore, the Lord prescribes a method of yajna that is available for everyone and can very easily be performed, and that is called the Sankirtan Yajna. Yagnai Sankirtana Prayi Yajanti Hi Sumedasa. Those who have Sumedasa. Medasa means intelligence, and Su means good. Those who have good intelligence, they'll perform the Sankirtan Yajna. By performing this Sankirtan Yajna, all of the benefits that were derived from by performing costly yajnas, right? For the satisfaction of the demigods or Vishnu, that can easily be obtained simply by chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's recommended this Sankirtan Yajna. He performed the Sankirtan Yajna in his pastimes that he performed in Navadvip and in Navadvip, Mayapur and Jagannath Puri. We see that he would chant and dance and take Jagannath Prasad. This was the program. But this seems very simple, and it is. It's a simple program. It's a very nice program, right? Anyone can perform it. And whatever your platform one is on, whether you're interested in karma kandi or karma yoga You can do this. Right? Sarva karma, akarma, sarva karma, moksha karma udaradi, tivrena bhakti yogena. Whether one is filled with material desires, or has no material desires, or is desiring liberation, tivrena bhakti yogena. The one should perform, this devotional service. What is that devotional service? Sankirtan. And eating food that is offered to Krishna, prasadam, right? And dancing in front of the deities. And this will, at least for humans, make sure that human society has the necessities of life. We see that the rain is all topsy-turvy. Either it doesn't come, or when it's not supposed to come, it comes, spoils the crops. Why? Why is it like that? Well, it's very simple. It's due to sin, sinful activities. People are all performing sinful activities. Eating meat, having illicit sex life, gambling. Right? People are gambling. In America, they have big casinos. And people go in there on Friday after they get their paycheck. And by Saturday, everything is gone. So they made a law for some people that are habitual gamblers. They have a limit, right? They can only gamble and lose $300 or $400, right? And after that, they have to go out. They can't gamble anymore, right? They have such a bad habit. They have to keep gambling. It's like a fever. And I don't know in India, I don't think they have casinos, right? No casino. In Goa. But then they have so many other dice games and so many things. Craps, they call it, shooting craps. So these are all sinful activities that the living entity has to avoid in order to make progress in spiritual life. And also just to have proper rainfall, proper production of grains. And just like in Maharashtra, there's very little rain. People are suffering because there's a drought. But they don't know the solution. The solution is to perform Harinam Sankirtan and to live piously. Well, this is the solution. But if you go anywhere in any village in Maharashtra, because I traveled in all the different districts of Maharashtra, all 26 districts, maybe there's more districts now, but in those days, in the 80s, we performed Sankirtan in all the different districts of Maharashtra. All the taluka also. But we would close our book distribution at 9:30. You know why? Right? Because after 9:30 there were only drunkards. Drunk persons talking all nonsense after 9:30. Right? So we closed the table and gave up. And that was 20 years ago. So imagine what it's like today. Right? So this is the degraded situation of human society. Such a pious place. People are God-fearing. I remember when people would come and buy Marathi Bhagavad Gita Jasai Tashi, they would take their shoes off and then touch the Bhagavad Gita. They're so respectful. Right? But due to the influence of Kaliyuga, they've fallen prey to all the bad habits. Right? And giving up the yajna, Sankirtan yajna. And therefore suffering, drought. So this Krishna consciousness movement is a very important movement for human society to save people from the contamination of Kaliyuga. Otherwise it's not possible to become free from the contamination. Without the association of devotees, you won't be able to resist the allurement of Maya. You won't be able to resist. Read in the paper every day, so much criminal activity, right, is going on. Murder, rape. So why? Because of the influence of Kaliyuga. Kaliyuga Prabhav. Very powerful. So what is the protection from Kaliyuga? Harinam Sankirtan. The chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. This is how people can become protected. They recognize they're dependent on the Lord by performing this yajna, and they will become peaceful. They'll become happy. And they'll become successful. Successful means the fulfilling the real purpose of this human form of life. And the real purpose of this human form of life, as explained by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is prema pumarta mahan, is to develop love of God. So are there any questions or comments? Okay. I'll read the verse again. Anad bhavati bhutani parjanyadana sambhava yagna bhavati parjanyo yagna karma samudabhavaha. All living bodies subsist on food grains which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by performance of yajna, sacrifice, and sacrifices born are prescribed duties. Okay, thank you very much for listening. Hare Krishna.